Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, film screening, The Guide, presented by Andrew Ackerman and Colby Brokvist. Andrew is a documentary filmmaker, producing videos for NatHab over the last 5 years. Among many other projects, Andrew served as a director of photography on the acclaimed documentary Chasing Coral. Colby has worked in the adventure travel industry for nearly 20 years and has been an expedition leader with NatHab since 2006. During that time, he has guided hundreds of departures, ranging from wild safaris, mountaineering and backpacking trips, to sailing and kayaking voyages. He has led expeditions in destinations as far-flung as Greenland, Antarctica, Patagonia, and Namibia, and closer to home throughout North America. He is an ambassador for Deuter Backpacks and currently serves as the chair of the Polar Tourism Guides Association. It's a pleasure to have you both with us today. Andrew, I'm going to hand things off to you.
Thanks, Kendall. Great introduction. Nice to meet virtually, everybody. Thanks for coming to our film. We're super excited to show you. I'm going to kind of introduce the film briefly, and then we'll watch it. And then I'll kind of share what maybe is like a theme for the day from the film, and then leave as much time for questions as possible. I'd love to hear from you. Basically, a little backstory. I started working with NatHab 5 years ago, and they're the coolest company in the world, as you all know. And on one of those trips in 2018, I was lucky enough to go to Greenland, and that's where I met Colby, which is just about the coolest place in the world to meet somebody. And I was just filming kind of the Greenland trip, and there was a traveler who I was interviewing, and there was a couple little short stories I was doing. But I was really struck in meeting Colby by a couple things. I am very drawn to deep passion in people, and I don't really care what it is. One of my good friends, my oldest friends, told me yesterday that his dream job is to be a librarian, and that was the coolest thing in the world to me, because that's what I'm drawn to. And seeing Colby in Greenland in his element, just filled to the absolute brim with passion for what he was doing and who he was there with, lit me up and inspired me in a huge way. And I just haven't heard many people talk about, glaciation and ice and, microbiome things the way Colby did. And it was so exciting. I came home and I just had this idea that there's a really cool film here. And so that was the idea. And, talked to Colby about it, and we got to know each other better. And we ended up traveling quite a bit together, which you'll see in this film. And it was just a really special process. And again, after the film, I'll tell you a little bit more about the themes and maybe the things to think about. But that was the process for the idea of a film. And the cool thing about documentary that separates it from narrative films is documentaries get written as they go. A narrative film, a Hollywood film, someone sits down, writes that, sells it, sends it, makes it, whatever, and then they go and they look at their script and they shoot the shot list. And the cool thing about documentary is it's so organic. So a lot of the film gets written, the more I get to know Colby, the more he gets to know me. And then when we're editing and we're finding these little things that work so well together that get us really excited. So that was a really fun part of this process, and documentaries in general. It was a real evolution of a story, and something that I'm really proud of and really excited to show you today. So that's all I have. I don't know if you want to chime in, Colby, or if we can just get the film started.
Well, just to say that it's been a pleasure working with you. I appreciate you, I guess, recognizing those things, if there's truth to it or not, I'm not sure. But it's been a really fun process, and I hope everybody enjoys your work.
Awesome. Cool, Kendall. Well, we can get it started.
In my mind, there's not another creature on the planet that defines wilderness like wolves. They can be social, they can be loners. They're extremely good at what they do. They're the top predator in their environments. You often have this alpha pair of a male and a female, and they will pair up together, sort of like the king and the queen of their domain. The pack is healthy, and they defend their territory, and they raise their young, and they find their food, and it's amazing. There's the emotional connection and the spirituality that comes along with understanding wolves in their own natural environment. And that's why I want to be with people in these places, to help them with that experience.
Just lift up a little bit.
Okay.
There and there.
As a guide, I get to go out on conservation-focused trips all over the world. I'm really fortunate to be able to introduce people to these places. I see discoveries in a really meaningful way. I grew up running around in the mountains, so they inherently just feel like a special place to me. My dad, my mom were very influential in taking me outdoors all the time. Whether we were out on the water or up a mountain or just camping in the forest, we were out doing those things together. My dad had a very strong ethic when it came to the outdoors. He would literally get on his hands and knees and crawl around and stalk animals and spend months getting to know their patterns. He would always teach this idea of reverence to me and my brother. Don't carve your name into a tree. Think about the tree. I developed a great love for being outside. I went into school for environmental sciences because I wanted to spend all my time outdoors. And then I got hired by a consulting firm and quickly realized that I was being issued a cubicle and that I was doing computer work, and I left. I went straight to the Appalachian Trail. And somewhere out there I decided to be a guide because I thought that was a pretty cool thing to be able to make that connection for people, to try to tell stories of these places and teach people all about the wilderness.
So look at all these trees, and they're all worn away. Generations of bison rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. And if you wanted to, you could walk over.
It's essential to his life. I think it's, food, water, and wilderness. I wouldn't even say shelter. He'd be fine out there with like a tarp.
I need the calm. I need to get out and have personal conversations with people. You pass people on the trail and you say hello, and maybe stop and talk about your experiences coming from either direction. Those things just don't happen in the cities. Everything's fast-paced and it's moving all the time. But outdoors, everybody's friends. A lot of guides are very A-type, kind of social drivers. I'm not the extroverted type at all. It's a little more intimidating for me to just sort of make small talk and meet people that I don't know. But then once I'm physically outside, that changes. So guiding, it's often easy for me to get up in front of people and share these places and share these experiences and kind of bring them into my little version of the world.
Yeah, we just saw 20% of the wolves that are in the park this morning. That was pretty amazing. Maybe one idea in understanding, the wolves is maybe understanding more about ourselves as well. There's so much more to the wolves, right? The stuff that we're scared of is a small part of their life. While some things might be scary, sometimes those scary things are just unknowns. And when you dive in a little bit more and you get to know those things, they become less scary.
Wolves are so charismatic. We can learn a lot about ourselves by watching them. They live in these intricate little communities, fight with another pack, or there's another wolf that's not behaving and they gotta figure it out, and they do. But wolves don't live that long. And so after a while, you watch one of them pass away, maybe even getting shot outside of the park. And that's really hard. You've seen them through these challenges and these ups and downs, and suddenly they're not there anymore. but we can also, by watching them, realize that they're in these wild places and that these places are worth protecting.
He's taught me so much about wilderness and why we love it and why we want to protect it. I've adventured my whole life outside of. A lot of that is for my sanity. I need to go for a trail run because I need to clear my head. But Colby goes out there for a different reason. He's not training for anything. He just goes out because he loves it. He loves sharing. He loves teaching people.
When I'm out there guiding with people, you give them a little bit of this and you give them a little bit of that, and then you get them into one place where everything comes together and a little light bulb goes off. And then they're talking about ecology and they're talking about conservation, all on their own. And then when people leave, they become ambassadors for these places. And I don't take that lightly. When I chose to leave the environmental consulting realm, my dad was a little upset. He and my mom worked their whole lives to get me into college. And then I got a really good job and everything was going the right way. And then I quit and was like, wait, what was all that for? But he also instilled in me exactly what I needed to not look back. Growing up, I got to hear all about pressure that he got from people that were in his life, telling him, this is what you're supposed to do. He always hated that. After my first year of guiding, he passed away, and so he hasn't seen my career progress. But being able to connect people to these places is really what he did for me when I was little. So I think he would be, I hope, impressed, proud.
Turn away this way for a minute. Let me get a picture of all the snowshoers. The granddaddy out here, Helheim, where most of these monsters are coming from. If you were here in the spring and through most of the summertime, you would not be able to access this because the whole thing that we're walking on right now is a giant river. Which one's yours?
Anything I can see with my glasses.
Which is what? What's our...
This one. And this one.
Yeah, this one.
As a guide now, it's been 16 years, and I find that most of those strong personal connections I've made with people in my life happened in the outdoors. It's a good place to spend time with the people that you love. We share that together and we get to carry that on. There's a legacy of that trip. I have those kind of wonderful experiences with guests all the time. And then they go home and I go home and I get a new group of people. But they're stories, they're not shared experiences anymore. Being able to relive experiences with the people in your life that you shared together is just the best of both worlds. Sarah and I both work for a travel company. She organizes trips and plans them to a T. But when we go out, we often just run around by the seat of our pants.
We can go right in 15 minutes, and that takes us to a little town that he highly recommends that's really beautiful.
Let's do both.
If we're supposed to go left, but we feel like we want to go right, then we do.
Let's go left.
Okay.
Traveling with Sarah is great because you have that sense of discovery, but you're now doing it with someone that's really close to you.
Those memories and those places and that time together, that's what you remember in life. You remember, oh, that adventure where we took this random road and we found this secret cave. It's about the adventure and the fun and the spontaneity and waking up next to Colby in a tent. That's the best.
I think having access to the outdoors is just inherently good for people. I'm really fortunate that my parents took me out into the wilderness when I was young. They knew what the wilderness was all about. They knew how special it was. We went there because that was a good place to go. It's a good place to spend time with the people that you love. In my mind, or my heart of hearts, I think what I do is connect people to the natural world. When all else is stripped away from our society, we still have the basic needs of the wolves and the wolf packs. They have a strong community around them, and that's what's most important.
Okay, back over to you guys.
Thanks for doing that. I'm excited to hear some questions in a few minutes. I think the one thing I just kind of wanted to use that as a springboard to talk about is, a personal philosophy on how we communicate, and it feels especially relevant right now with how polarized our country and our world feels right now. And I think, especially in the environmental movement and in any real movement, it feels incredibly important to me to communicate about issues and about things with a empathy and vulnerability driven approach, and to rely on people's empathy to care instead of their interest. And what I mean by that is, if you care about an issue, and we'll pick a random one, the pebble mine, if you're either really for it or really against it, and you try to communicate about the pros and cons of that thing, that inanimate object, your net you cast is small because it only gets people who already believe what you believe. And it's hard to change, even though we'd like this not to be true, it is hard to change another human being's mind with purely analytical data. It often requires some emotional tie. And what we try to do with this film, and what I try and do in general when I communicate, because that's my job as a filmmaker, is to communicate ideas and art, is to rely on someone's empathy. And I think in this story you can see, like, it's easier for an audience to buy into the idea of Colby because we're humans and we empathize with each other and we care about each other and we're along for his highs and lows and that character's story, because that's not just a character, that's a person right there. And I just find that to be a much more effective way to talk about issues is, hey, this is how I feel because this is my story and how it affects me. And it's a lot easier for someone to show up to that table, which sometimes, this is not one of those. This film, I don't think, is one of those, but some issues are really difficult to talk about, right? But to ever get past them, to ever solve them, to ever deal with any of those problems, what is required is talking and communication. So anyway, this film is not a super intense documentary about against the pebble mine or something like that. It's kind of a loving story of the importance of sharing wilderness with people. But there are some core themes and philosophies in this film that I think and find very important for how we talk about the things we love, talk about the things that are important to us, and now more than ever with how divided we appear to be, and we in some ways are. So that was kind of my main theme that I wanted to just kind of share. But yeah, that's all I have. I'd love to hear questions or comments or something.
Well, we do have some questions coming in for sure. I'd like to remind folks that if they do have questions for Colby and Andrew, you can submit those in the control panel in the questions field. All right, the most popular question, guys, is where are your favorite places to travel? And where is a place that you haven't been yet that you're dying to go?
I'll go first. The place that I'm dying to be, and I fully blame this on Colby, this is 100% his fault because it's a difficult place to get to, and he's got it lodged in my brain now, is Antarctica. I want to go there so badly, and it's not a quick flight. It's difficult. So that's my top destination. And actually, in the making of this film, again, I blame Colby for this. Like, my new favorite places to travel are polar regions. There is something so special about the feel and the air and the colors of those kind of regions, north and south, higher latitude and lower longitude. So that's not right geographically, but Yeah, polar regions are my absolute favorite place to travel right now.
Yeah, Alpine and Arctic for sure. I'm glad I instilled that in you because Antarctica is a great goal. I would put Antarctica and Greenland maybe neck and neck for my two favorite places, and specifically the eastern side of Greenland, because those two regions are just so remote and they're so unlike anything that we experience in our daily lives. A lot of other places I've traveled to, that you can find a lot of connections, if you look for them and relate to things that are in your own life. But those places they just throw you for a whole loop. There's from everything from the culture in Greenland to the ice, to just the immense landscapes, the amount of wildlife in both of those places is incredible and unlike anything that we experience in our day-to-day lives. If I had to travel to a place, or I could travel to a place right now, I would go to see the cassowaries. That's on my list. If you're not familiar with what a cassowary is, definitely look up some pictures on Google Images. They're basically big blue dinosaurs that still live in Papua New Guinea and Australia.
Awesome. What places did you visit to film this movie?
It started in Greenland. That's where we met. So there's a bunch of footage that Andrew took for a little piece that he was doing for NatHab, just about that trip. But then he was secretly taking a lot of other footage of me, because he sort of planted this idea in his own mind for this film. So that's what started it. And then we were out a couple times in the wintertime in Yellowstone to get the wolf imagery. We were there for some time on our own, and he also joined a NatHab trip to get some of the footage that you saw of me working. And then we did a special trip it was Sarah and I's vacation in Norway, and we went to Lofoten and spent about a week out there. And so Andrew came along and filmed our own personal trip.
Yeah.
Cool. And Cheryl and Kristen are watching. They joined you in Greenland, I believe.
Oh.
So they say hi.
Oh.
So on that topic of, Andrew, you having an idea in your head, how do you choose film projects?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it always starts with a spark. It always starts with inspiration, and I like this about myself. I'm easily inspired, but there's different tiers. Like, I can be inspired by like beautiful clouds, but I'm not gonna make a film about clouds, and I think there's something about when I'm inspired by a person, and then I let that just live and marinate and exist. And then I really try to get to know that person better, because over the course of making a film about someone, you're going to get to know them very well, and you're going to go places emotionally, intellectually, that you wouldn't in a normal friendship as quickly as you do in film. And there's a lot of trust that's required both ways for that. And I take that very seriously. And someone allowing you to tell their story, that's incredibly vulnerable, right? And I'm speaking generally. I'm not putting words in your mouth, Colby. Just someone, allowing you in to share that to the world. That's a big responsibility that I take very seriously. So it starts with a spark of creativity and inspiration, and then it kind of goes into relationship building. And a lot of it is like, do I want to spend the next 2 years getting to know this person? Do I want to spend the next couple of years like diving in? It's almost like starting a business, and it's like that kind of thinking. Like, do I trust them? Am I gonna be vulnerable with them? Do I feel that I can, handle their vulnerability with me, letting me into their life? And am I up for that responsibility and that challenge? So that's kind of that next tier of questions that feel really important. To me, that's the decision-making process. It's way less about, oh, that's cool, let's do that, that seems cool. It's more about relationships. years and years ago, there's this incredibly talented photographer. He had this great quote that he told me a long time ago that stuck in my brain. He said, photography is light plus relationships. And I think you could substitute film for in that. It's like, it's light plus relationships. So it's capturing something in a visual medium, and equally it's relationship. So to me, that's almost the process of like, light is like that light bulb going off in my head, and then building relationship.
Mm-hmm. And Colby, there's someone watching who is also the subject of a documentary, and so their question to you is, was there anything that really surprised you in how you were portrayed?
Yeah, that's a great segue, actually. As Andrew was just giving his answer, I was thinking that it was actually the most important thing for me, like how I was going to be portrayed. And so developing that trust with Andrew, it worked both ways. You know, I didn't have any inspiration or aspirations for being, you know, the subject of a film. Andrew approached me, and it took me a little while to warm up to the whole thing, specifically because people can portray you however they want, you know. Like I think of other films that I've seen in film festivals. Over the years, you might see one individual portrayed as a different type of character in different films. Particularly rock climbers like to do that. You know, they'll make Alex Honnold look, you know, funny and quirky and socially awkward, and in other movies, you know, completely focused and he's a badass, and they can choose. And there's only so much space, right? And especially in a short film, to develop characters, you know, and so you have to choose. And so what story is really going to be told, and then throw that into context of documentary filmmaking as opposed to a narrative, where, you know, there is a lot of room built in for the director, for Andrew, to decide how he wants that story to unfold, what story is going to be told, and then what your role in that story is going to be. So I think a lot of it comes down to communication. For us, that's what it was. And Andrew, thank you, Andrew, for recognizing that. I mean, you're a true professional, and, you know, right out of the gate, he said, look, like this is what it's all about, and this is how it's going to be, but this is how I want you to perceive it, and I won't do these things. And we kind of hashed out where a line was of what was and what wasn't appropriate, and what we each wanted to get out of the project. And that made me feel a lot more comfortable. And then the other courtesy that Andrew had, you know, I was able to see some of the footage earlier on, you know, different scenes, and, you know, what do you think of this and what do you think of that? And, you know, he allowed me to say, like, oh man, I really don't like that, or I don't like this, or, you know, but, you know, you got it, do what you want with it, you know, but it's not my preference. And he was really receptive to all of that.
Mm-hmm. So switching gears a little bit, Andrew, when you're filming in such remote locations and you have to hike in and carry all of your equipment, what kind of equipment are you bringing with you? How many cameras? And actually, people want to know what brands of cameras, what type of photos and lenses are you using?
1 second.
Okay.
He rolls with a pretty light kit, actually. It's surprising what he's able to do.
Yeah, so my typical documentary camera is a big, and it changed in the course of this film. It's a big, you know, cinema shoulder camera. It was an FS7 for a lot of the film, and then last fall I bought a Blackmagic Ursa. That's the majority. That's like, hey, we have a car. I wouldn't hike with that camera, but that's like, we have a car. For the really remote stuff, I mean, like a lot of that Lofoten stuff, I mean, we backpacked in, you know, and I'm not the hiker that Colby and Sarah are. So I got my butt kicked on that, but I actually had this camera, which is a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. And this thing, amazing image quality. It's not a hybrid camera. It doesn't do still photos. It's just video, and it's really, really, really good. It shoots raw video. So I backpacked with that, and I had like a waterproof sheet on it, and I just had that around my neck because it was raining the whole time. And then I had a DJI Mavic 2 Pro drone. It's like this big. And then my bag was just stuffed with batteries. And there's a very cool backpack company called Peak Design that makes really, really useful gear for this kind of stuff. So I would use their bags and accessories. Yeah, and I mean, like, I'd have a little tag on my camera strap, my backpack strap, where the camera could live, waterproof. See a shot, take it off, get the shot, put it back, keep hiking, kind of thing. But yeah, had to be pretty self-sustained and a lot of that stuff. So small, small, small.
Very cool. Andrew, what are some of the topics on which you've tried to persuade people to change their minds through your filmmaking?
That's actually a great point for me. I don't think I ever try to persuade someone to change their mind. I think what I try and do is give perspective. And I think that's all you can do. And when I look back at my life, I don't think I've ever changed a big part of how I showed up in the world because someone said you have to. I think I did those things because my partner told me I hurt her feelings when I say something a certain way. Okay, she shared her perspective. Wow, I need to take that in. I need to change, right? Or someone shared how men can show up in the world, and oh wow, that's how I show up in the world. Okay, I need to change. So I think what I try and do is give perspective, and it's not right or wrong, because that can go so quickly into like bringing people's defenses up and walls, and it's just here's what I believe, and here's a story that I think shows this, and I'm relying on someone's empathy in that story to get them to like buy into that perspective and open their mind a little bit. So that's kind of that. I mean, a lot of my work is in environmentalism. A lot of what I do is environmental stories, which, and like I've been saying, are human stories in the environment. And then, so that's a big topic. And then I'm working on this project right now that I'm very excited about around hopelessness with kids. So giving hope and understanding hopelessness, giving hope to students, and kind of the mental health crisis that's happening in our country. And again, you can't tell kids, here's what you have to do. You could just give them perspective. Or at least I can. So those are two things that are on my mind right now, and environmentalism always is. And the other one's kind of new for me, and I'm very excited about it.
Great. And Colby, well, both of you, I think this film, clearly by the comments today, was really inspiring for people. So Colby, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for people who want to get started as an outdoor guide?
Well, it's funny because I'm writing a book on the subject at the moment. So keep your eye open for that, I guess, down the road a little ways.
Where's the good place for them to start?
You know, the funny thing about guiding is folks, they get their start in so many different ways. You know, I think just putting yourself out there is the best way to do it. You know, of course, you know, we always think of like, oh, you have this great subject knowledge, or you have like some sort of like technical skill set, like for mountaineering or skiing or something, and that's a good way to, I guess, you know, show competency. But really, guiding is it's customer service. We're very much in the service industry, and a lot of it's interpretation. So a lot of the things that are in this film, as far as like making connections for people and helping people better to understand a place rather than to just visit it, right? It sort of annoys me to no end when people are like, oh yeah, like Egypt, I've done that, you know, like as soon as somebody says they've done that, it makes me feel like they didn't really find meaning in it. Or they would approach the conversation differently, or they would rephrase it. And so I think a big part of guiding, you know, in context of anybody can buy a plane ticket and go anywhere in the world, right, on their own. They don't need us, but a lot of people want us, and because we can help them to develop a better understanding, we can make connections to the environment or to the local culture and things like that. So I think finding ways to set yourself apart from all the people that just have regular technical skills is a good way to get yourself in the door. And then you can start calling the companies that you're interested in and have those sorts of conversations with them, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, you know, I can rock climb. I think of a guiding service I used to help manage, and we always used to joke that like we could grab any dirt bag out of Camp 4 and they're going to be able to kind of like drag somebody up a 2-pitch climb. That doesn't mean they're going to be a good guide. It just means that they're a good rock climber. And so I think going to prospective employers with that sort of mindset, that you're in the customer service industry and you're helping people to understand a place better and find meaning, that conversation is going to take you a lot further when you're in your interviews.
Great. Let's see, Andrew, you mentioned when you're making a film, you hope that you can enjoy being with the subject and getting to know the subject for a couple of years. Is that how long it typically takes to put a documentary together?
It really depends. There's a lot of amazing documentaries coming out right now on huge streaming services that are, interview and then B-roll pasted over that, and that can happen pretty quickly depending on the time frame. Like, I can't even think, there's so many out right now, but like you can do a documentary very quickly. The Last Dance with Michael Jordan is huge right now, and that's like a bunch of interviews and archival footage and then a bunch of B-roll of the people in the now. This film and a lot of the films that I like to do take a long time because you're spending a lot of time with that person over a long period of time. And I mean, we went to Greenland in October and then went to Yellowstone in March and then Lofoten in June. And, and then it takes a long time to put all that together and to actually then write the film. So, and then we just kind of have finished it recently. So I don't know, there's something about taking time with people that I really enjoy. Is there a world in which Colby and I did a few interviews and did some B-roll in Boulder and threw together a 5-6 minute film in 3 months? Like, sure, easily, that we could have done a version of that. And for me, the real experience and what I hope comes across as like these moments of truth come from spending time with someone and building that trust. And I think that's the other thing is, how much trust can you build in a short period of time? Some, but to really get someone to understand you and to understand them, to me, just takes time. So they often take just time. I mean, I've been working on one film for coming on 8 years now, and it just takes time. So there's huge variety, depends on the length too. Feature length films takes way longer than short films. If this had been a feature length, we'd probably still be in the midst of shooting it. And so yeah, it just kind of depends though. It depends on the style, and the style I like takes a lot longer.
So there was some curiosity about the wolf footage you got. Which wolf trip were you on, and can you explain the process of tracking that wolf pack?
I'll grab that. So the wolf footage that's there was a combination from so it was all filmed in the northern range of Yellowstone, which has to be the best place in the world to go watch wolves. There's some other places, I can think of some places in Alaska or BC that they show up sometimes, and you have a pretty good chance if you spend a lot of time there. But Yellowstone, you can walk in and we can help you find wolves. And one of the special things about the NatHab Quest, the Wolf Quest trips that we do in March, is that we actually participate in their citizen science program. And so we have these radios, come with wolf radios, and we're in touch with the biologists and a whole citizen science crew. And what it is, it's a focused study of the wolf packs that are in the northern range every single day during the month of March. And so there's so many eyes on them, and we're seeing them day after day. It's out of the whole month of March, there'll only be a handful of days where people don't see wolves. And so we're out there participating in that. We have the radios, and that's how we do it. We're not necessarily tracking the wolves. We do a little bit of that from the side of the road, but most everything happens on the road. The thing about the wolves is, they really define wilderness, don't they? And so they really don't like people and human habitation and that sort of thing, and so they stay in their own place, but they're used to people being on the road, just to where they don't really even pay attention to it anymore. It's like, oh yeah, and then the people, they're over there. So as long as we stay on the road and use that as a corridor for watching the wolves just settle into their natural behaviors, and that's how we're able to witness them and spend meaningful time watching them and getting to know them. Did that answer the question? I think maybe.
Yeah. So what's the story behind that little fox on the porch that you encountered?
Oh,
Do you remember
Colby,
that scene?
Oh, this is also in the northern range. So that's in Cook City. I mean, for better or worse, you guys, there's a few foxes that live in the town in the winter time, and there are a lot of tourists in there. Particularly, there's like a big snowmobile crew, in addition to some wildlife watching folks like us, and they get fed. They get fed. And so I walked out this particular morning when Andrew was filming, just the start of the day of a guide, and they happened to just be running around out there. And so I went over to just to take a minute and sit with them, because that's what we're there for, And he happened to be behind me and caught it on film.
Can you guys tell us a little bit more about your experience in Greenland and the trip itself, and also how shooting conditions were? And
Yeah, I can. I mean, Colby was talking a little bit earlier about Greenland, and like going to Lofoten with Colby and Sarah was so cool. I mean, dream come true. And I'm sitting in these beautiful islands in northern Norway going, wow, this is one of the coolest places on this planet. When I was in Greenland, the thought was, this is no longer on this planet. It's so otherworldly and amazing to see in the distance at all times from where we were, like this mountain that is the Greenland ice sheet. Just this wall, and you like know that there's a whole mountain range buried underneath there. It is maybe the most special, amazing place I've ever been to in my life, and it's just so incredible. And the trip is designed to let you soak that up, and you fly from Iceland, and then you helicopter to another little section, and then you helicopter, and then you take a boat 7 hours, and you just get to the most unbelievably remote, gorgeous little bay, and actually Colby's partner like designs that trip and made that, so that's really cool little, but you just get to this stunning, unbelievable location, and then there's this gorgeous NatHab camp that like both blends into the environment, but it is also incredibly comfortable, and you just hang out there, and it's incredible. So I have nothing but amazing things to say about that trip. I want to do it every year. Yeah.
Colby, anything to add?
Yeah, Greenland, it's a hard place to describe. I think I guess kind of what I was saying before, like it's just so different than what we experience in our everyday lives. It's hard to even talk about what it's like. You'd need a poet to try to capture the feelings and emotions of what it's like to be there. You have to show up to understand it.
Mm-hmm. I concur. So Andrew, people want to know where they can buy or view your film, and if you're going to be entering this film into any of the film festivals.
Yes, so no need to buy. This will be free. We have just submitted to a bunch of film festivals, and actually Sunday, WWF, World Wildlife Fund, came on board as a sponsor to help us distribute the film. So I don't exactly know when the premiere will be. A lot of it you all just got a sneak peek, but a lot of that process is dictated by which festivals we get into, and then after we premiere, we'll release it online, and then NatHab and WWF will send it out to their networks along with some other friends in the environmental world. So I'm sure you'll get something from NatHab with the official, release and premiere of the film. And we wanted it to be free because it felt important that I recognize the privilege I have in getting to go to these places, and that's not something many people get to do. And if we're going to talk about sharing wilderness with others, it didn't feel right to put a paywall in front of it that already exists with the plane ticket. So yeah, you'll be able to view it hopefully either this fall or early next year.
And how can we see more of your work, Andrew?
That's a good question. I don't have any social media. So you can go to my website at www.offthemap.media. It's a little outdated, but there's some interesting stuff on there, and you can see what I'm working on.
Are there any projects that are out in the world right now that we can view online or on Netflix or anything?
Yeah, there's a film called The Busboy, which I finished last year, which is about a master sommelier. And if you're into the food and wine world, that's on a streaming service called Som TV. And then there's a film that I was the cinematographer for called Chasing Coral, which is an environmental underwater adventure film, and that's on Netflix. So The Busboy on Som TV and Chasing Coral on Netflix.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm going to call it there. I do want to say Eric, Colby's brother, has been watching and commenting, and he loves what you did with the film, Andrew, and he thought it was beautiful and he got emotional. So family's approved. So I want to hand it back to you guys for some closing comments, and I'll start with Andrew.
I mean, I feel like I really shared what's important to me. I think everyone here probably has a real sense of what's important to me and how I like to work. And I just think it's incredibly important to be intentional in what we put out in the world. And I think, you know, words matter, messages matter. And so this is something I really believe in, and I'm excited, and I'm really grateful that everyone showed up and engaged and watched it. And yeah, so I'm very grateful, and hopefully meet some of you in real life one day.
And Colby?
Well, thanks everybody for joining today and for your interest in the film. Andrew, of course, thank you for the care that you've put into this whole thing, and joy that you've brought to the project. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, travel, it's, you know, if we look for meaning and understanding out there in the world, it's there. And you know, to me, that's what I wanted to bring to the film, and I hope that you all felt that today, is, you know, by diving in a little deeper and getting to know a place and really trying to understand it, and add that to your, you know, your own being as a global citizen, I think is really important. So I hope you'll take that message next time you get out there on 1.5 trips. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, gentlemen. Andrew, the film is just absolutely stunning. You and your team did a beautiful job, as always. And Colby, I really appreciate your vulnerability in this film, and it was beautiful to get to know you a little bit better. So thank you both. And my thanks to everyone who tuned in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We did record today's presentation, and we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks, gentlemen.
Bye. Thank you.